So I was recently looking through some old systems for sale and I found this desktop for $10, which looks pretty old, but I happened to notice a small sticker that said i7 inside, which I wasn't really sure at first if this was true because the sticker was very old and outdated looking, but next to it was also a Windows Vista sticker. But sure enough, the system does indeed have the first generation i7-920. This i7 has 4 cores and 8 threads, and the system was pretty fast when it came out back in 2008. And it would have set you back about $1,300 back when it came out originally. But if you clicked on this video, you're probably not wondering as much about the whole system as you are just the processor itself. So I assembled a test bench for the CPU, which was a bit difficult because I needed a legacy partitioned SSD to connect to the older motherboard that does not support UEFI BIOS. But other than that, it was fairly simple to connect, other than the fact that it only supports a maximum of 12 GB of DDR3. So I had to go with a weird configuration of 3 sticks of 4 GB of DDR3. Going along with this system is my EVGA GTX 980 Ti, which I recently did a video on. It's actually pretty good. I also applied some fresh thermal paste to the CPU to give it the best chance possible, and without further ado, let's get into some benchmarks. Starting off with Cinebench, we got a single core score of 549 and a multi-core score of 2,872. Now, getting a number that is less than 1,000 for the single core performance in Cinebench is kind of low by today's standards, but you have to understand when this came out in 2008, this was blazingly fast. Benchmarking a few games, starting with Control at 1080p high settings, we get an average FPS of 32, which is definitely playable. Let's keep things realistic here, but we're getting a huge bottleneck, even for being paired with a GTX 980 Ti. But I'll show the comparison system running a Ryzen 7 3700X compared to this older i7 at the end of the video. The next game I decided to test was Overwatch 2, a game that's pretty well optimized for older hardware. And at 1080p ultra settings, we get an average FPS of 73, which is a lot better than I expected, to be honest. But we're still getting a major bottleneck because of the older CPU. And next I chose an even more intensive game for older hardware, Rust, which is probably honestly going to be the hardest game to run on this list, and we got an average FPS of 36. While this is playable, I did have to drop a lot of the settings such as ambient occlusion, reflections, shadows, and other things to get this to a playable frame rate, but the experience is still fine for the hardware, and honestly, it's playable. Next, I decided to run Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p high settings and got an average FPS of 52, which is really not bad at all. But as you'll see in a second, it's being drastically held back by the older processor. Lastly, I ran my personal favorite game, Rainbow Six Siege, at 1080p very high settings and got an average FPS of 158, which is hands down the highest performing game on this list but it's also the oldest and probably most optimized. So, to compare this older i7 to a more, well, slightly more modern Ryzen 7 3700X, here's a graph for comparison for every game I tested so far. Just a little side note, if you're wondering why I didn't test that many games, it's partly because I don't own that many games and I didn't feel like buying more just to benchmark. But if you have any games that you'd suggest I buy to benchmark in the future, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. Other than that, I would say the i7 920, or really any first-gen i7, is okay in the current age, but it's really not worth your time or money, and I would say go for at least a 4th-gen i7 if you're really on a budget. Other than that, thanks for watching, and let me know if you enjoyed the video.